NURIS is, in case you don't know. So NURIS is a innovation cluster of Nazarbayev University. It's been around for more than 10 years already, and it supports aspiring young people in their attempts to start new businesses, develop their businesses, and also offers various infrastructure to support this idea. So today we're discussing a very interesting topic, which is artificial intelligence. You can imagine that even 10 years ago, AI was just basically two letters which you could see in fiction and action movies and stuff like this. And right now it's everywhere, and it's a hot topic. So I think we should definitely look into this in the future, and hopefully sessions like this will be not a single thing, but we have to develop this as a system, because Nazarbayev University in general also pays a lot of attention to artificial intelligence. For example, our partners ISAI, which is a center for artificial intelligence, has been around this area for like 5 or 6 years already, I think. Okay, so now it's working, I think. So without further ado, I think we should start. Yeah. I think I would like to invite our moderator. Well, thank you very much, and I wish you a very productive panel session. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, dear guests, dear panelists. I'd like to, first of all, welcome all of you at today's panel session on artificial intelligence, trends, and practical applications. First of all, a word of gratitude to the organizers. Thank you for hosting this excellent event and for this opportunity to discuss AI and application in various different fields. Before I invite our distinguished panelists, experts to the stage, I would like to note that although AI in most of the people's perception is right now is ChatGPT, language models, although conversational models are a hype, are a very good thing right now, but we will try to dive a little bit deeper and to go beyond the large language models. We'll look at what AI in terms of research in various fields of robotics, enterprise solutions, startups, and etc. So without further ado, let me introduce the panel of speakers. And we will start with Mr. Miras Savetov, the CEO of Essential Technologies LLC. Please join me on the stage. Ms. Madina Abdrakhmanova, a data scientist in ISAI. You just pick any place you want. Mr. Azamat Yeshmuhamedov, postdoctoral, ISAI. Ms. Aknur Karabay, data scientist at ISAI as well. And last but not least, Alikhan Talipov, a senior developer community manager at EPAM. So let's start with maybe the basic question right now, right? What is AI? Is it a hype, hypo, or hype? Let's maybe start with Alikhan. Do we have microphone?
So, hi everyone. I'd like to maybe let's try to give the definition, kind of research and scientific-based definition, and after that we can continue with the more simple terms.
Exactly. Yeah. If we go to scientific thing, maybe Madina, you could start. Yeah.
Then if you could pull up my slides, I have some visuals that would be helpful to explain.
Sure.
Okay, let's see. I think, yes, the one behind this one. Yeah, if you could go to the second slide. Yes, that's me. And please go to the second slide. Okay, so I would like to kind of remind everyone the main pipeline of our ML projects. The first main ingredient is the data that we work with, right? So we want to collect it. Then we annotate, we label the data. And once it's prepared for our models and we have chosen the model, we can go to the third step, which is data. No, can you please go back to the second slide? No, back, please. Okay, we went to the end for some reason. So the third step would be focused on the model. You would want to train it, I believe. Then you potentially deploy. Okay, it's not working. Let's see. Thank you. And I think for the startups, the final step is the crucial one, because from the perspective of research, we take some big data set, we train, we have some benchmark, we evaluate, and we kind of move on. But when we talk about startup culture or just major companies, the deployment is very important for you, such that the data works well at the testing stage, and then it continues working well while you're using your system that where the model is integrated. And here, if you take a look at the pipeline, you'll see that there are arrows that go back to the first stage, which means that once you deploy your model, your work with the data itself never finishes. You continue fine-tuning, and I think with the large models, the large language models, it's especially evident. It's commonly said that whenever you take the big model, it could be pre-trained, and then you fine-tune it on some specific context. Especially if you want to adapt it to Kazakh language or something else, you continue training as you have more scenarios incorporated into your data. So the quality of the data you have is very important. But at this stage, we have a situation that because of the privacy concern and the amount of data that the new models require, like transformers, the architecture requires so much data, even more than CNNs, you have to continuously look for real data, and that is hard. So can I continue with the presentation, or should I?
Yes, please continue with the presentation. Would like to go on with so since you started with the data, what trends in data collection, data usage, data processing do you have? Do you foresee? And then we will start discussing with other colleagues.
Yeah, so as you know, the main topic of our panel today is the trend. So the trend I'm trying to make today is because of the issues with the real data, now people are moving on to the synthetic data. And here it's not necessarily means large language models that generate your data or diffusion models like Midjourney. We have actually another nice option that we are exploring and very excited about at the site. So the main issues with the data is both on the data collection part and annotation. And at SI, we spend a lot of time on working with data sets. It's actually a part of our major contribution. It's not only the models that are adapted to different domains, it's the data itself that we share with everyone. So hopefully startups and other enterprises can build upon. So when you collect the data, there might be not insufficient amount of it, specifically to your task. There could be some missing edge cases. For example, when you do object detection, certain cases could be just rare and they might not appear. But when you deploy it to some real-time and real-life systems in startups or in big enterprises, those rare cases can cost a lot to you. But you might not even envision it, and you might have certain bias because the population that you represent in the data that you have can be limited. So this is that. The data collection, and the last one. So there's a talk that even Google has issues with that. The models that they trained are built on proprietary data, essentially of their users. And now, since there is a crackdown on the privacy concerns, certain models and certain data in their data sets is no longer free to use. So technically, they are obliged to no longer use those models, retrain, and impute it with something else. But given that we have these privacy concerns, it's getting harder and harder to find the real data. So what do? You try to synthesize it. And then you have annotation. And from practice, like Aknur and I, we spend a lot of time curating dataset. It's a big pain to work with that. And some of the students that we have here, they've actually been helping us to annotate the datasets. And it's another problem that you have. It's costly because you have to invest in their human capital that does it. There are certain limits because we are people, we have certain number of hours that we can work with. And what else I have here? And there could be some errors because we're all humans, there is a human factor. So ideally, you would have synthetic data and you would have some automatic process of annotating it. Okay, so let's see. Oh no. Okay, so this is from a consulting group, Gartner. They're estimating that by 2030, the major amount of data that will be used in training is actually synthetics. So I'm just kind of reaching out to you guys. If you are observing issues with finding data for your project, maybe you should think about it like outside of a box and think about synthesizing it. It could be a generative model, it could be some simulators, but this is something that could elevate your pain. And this is what is happening both in startup worlds, in research. This is basically where it's going, so don't be afraid of using it. What else do you have here? Yeah, so essentially, because it's synthesized data, there are ways to automate the process of annotating. It's cost effective because you're mainly working with the program. You can optimize the number of people that are simulating and synthesizing data versus having lots of annotators. And this is actually a report from MIT. Hopefully we'll post these presentations. And if you take a look, there is basically just an example of how MIT researchers were able to make their models more robust thanks to the synthetic data. But when you work with the synthetic data, it's very important of the quality of it, right? Because we started the conversation about that you need to have real high quality data. It should represent the real world and it should be clean and very well annotated. So one way to do it is actually not to use Midjourney, not to use ChatGPT, and actually utilize digital twins. The whole concept of digital twins came actually from the 20th century. And one of the first examples is the Apollo program. And when there were issues with Apollo 13, they actually had a digital twin, basically a simulator of their aircraft on board on Earth that helped them to mitigate the issues. And this is kind of similar. You think about the physical simulating the physical real world in virtual, where all the laws are there, where you create different twins of different objects, and this way you can recreate certain scenarios that is hard and just could be dangerous, even if we talk about scenarios in factories, or just costly to create and capture. And this model could progress throughout the world, so you could simulate a drone or some other entity that you have in your project, see how it progresses, and this way kind of capture it in different timestamps that could be impossible in real life. So one of the ways how you can do it is NVIDIA Omniverse. I believe it's kind of free to use. And what you do is you generate those 3D assets using their tools. You create different scenes, you simulate them, and this is how you kind of could this is how you can generate high quality synthetic data that could boost performance. And if you go to the website of NVIDIA and you search Omniverse, you'll see tons of real examples of how they were able to deploy in different situations. So this basically, Jason Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, he believes this is the next big thing. He prefers it more than large language models. So I think we should at least consider what he believes is the next visionary idea. And this is just an example of how we use it Isai. This is the last slide. I'm almost done. One common task in AI is object detection, pose estimation. And pose estimation can be used for a variety of tasks. And a common data set is actually MS COCO. And MS COCO was developed quite some time ago, and it's been scrutinized for ethical and privacy issues and fairness and underrepresentation of certain minority groups. So one way to mitigate those issues is to simulate them. And what's good here about the annotation is that if you take a look at this, at the side that is behind my colleagues, you'll see that the major landmarks of a person's limbs are already annotated. It's provided by the program because it's simulating them, which means that it elevates your need to annotate data. So we have just some really talented students who understand the law of physics. They recreate different scenes that are missing, and they could even randomize the process such that the new version of the MS COCO dataset is improved, and the models that are developed on it are much better, and you can evaluate it. So this is just one example of how you don't of not using generative models that have their own bias to generate synthetic data. So the main point I'm trying to make is that please don't be afraid to use synthetic data. There are now ways of how to make it of great quality. It could boost your performance, and it could really think of, I would say that fairness is a very important thing also in research now. It could make your models more fair, so that it can represent different groups and different scenarios. So that's it. Basically, the major component of AI is the data, and this is basically one of the big trends, the use of synthetic one.
Thank you. Indeed, the data is now perceived as the new oil, the new gold. I would like to ask Alekhan, from your perspective of a enterprise AI solutions, what trends do you foresee?
So, thank you for the question. So, you just mentioned that data is the new oil, and I would absolutely agree with that, since this understanding came not today, not yesterday. It's been maybe a couple of decades when the humankind could figure out that it's the new oil. But nowadays, the AI is kind of disrupting the whole world. It's changing the methods we had until now, until today, and it's changing the business models of some companies, since it's after some kinds of enterprise optimization processes. Most of the IT companies, for example, they are cutting maybe 10 or 15% of their employees, as an example. And the next big thing, one of the next big things, is the data governance, I would say, since the data is used to train for example, to train different AIs. And when we use a certain server, a certain service, we don't care about the terms and conditions it has. And so the big tech companies, they get a lot of data about us, about our behavior, about our digital footprint, and everything is very easily traceable. And the next big thing is to care about our relation to this data. I mean that if we keep using the data by default, it needs to be regulated, since there are lots of ethical questions, and I think we will discuss ethical questions sometime later today. And the next big thing is this merge of data governance, data ownership, and one of the solution for the enterprise companies, for example, the industry I work for, is the making it on blockchain. I know I am now bringing two overhyped topics, but still, the way we govern our data. If it would have been on blockchain, for example, we would care about our data very differently. I mean, if a certain AI tool is trained on a certain data, but if somebody owns that data through a blockchain technology, for example, it's easily traceable whose data it is. And if it comes to some kind of royalties, even it's also very easy to make it more transparent, I would say. And another thing is, another trendy thing for enterprise and for enterprise solutions is that nowadays, as I said before, most companies, they are trying to optimize their activities in terms of using different AI tools. And it's not about using ChatGPT to distill a certain text and make it smaller but more understandable. It's about saving billions for different companies, and it's not like a nice to have tool. It's a kind of mandatory imperative thing which saves billions. For example, if we talk about some kind of coal mining places. So if some companies use AI tools, for example, some kind of computer vision to understand how many leftovers are in the ladle of an excavator. It can save lots of billions of dollars for a company, and such use cases are everywhere. I mean, I wouldn't name a certain vendor, certain company, since I'm not sure if I'm allowed to do so here, but the main reason is that it can save billions in different types of production and manufacturing, supply chain management industries.
Okay, thank you. From the other perspective, from the perspective of a startup company, from the startup world, I believe we have lots of people who are thinking of opening their own startup with AI superpowered startup. Miras, what do you think the trends in the startup world regarding the AI, what trends are there right now? Because you are a startup company, you do have lots of connections, lots of friends who are also in a startup business. What trends do you see right now for the companies that are trying to leverage AI into their work?
So generally speaking, I'm an entrepreneur with 5 years of experience. And before, I used to think that to make money, you have to solve a very complex problem. But what I learned is that to make money, you have to solve problem for a lot of people. And this thing, it's very subtle, but has great difference in the way you approach things. So if you try to solve a problem for a lot of people, I wouldn't say they're like trends that are something unusual, because startups in itself is always some new thing coming up, and the way you scale it to a lot of people. I would say it's just a new tech. AI itself isn't like a big trend. I think it's already a commodity in a lot of places, like ChatGPT and all those things. They used to be like AI and research and something complex, but right now they have APIs and they become commodity. And big trend is, I think, packaging them all together and creating some tools using that, making like just one level above this ChatGPT, or one level above ChatGPT, and those type of things. Even though they seem obvious, they still make a lot of money. And the most obvious example is there is app that's called ChatGPT, which grosses $3 million per year in revenue, which is literally just call API to ChatGPT server, to OpenAI server, and then shows it in your app. And there are like 6 apps like that, and 3 of them make more than 1 million a year. So I think that's like, it's already a commodity in a sense, and you can make a lot of stuff by just making something one level above, making it more user-friendly. So I think that's big trend now.
Okay, thank you. Indeed, as I believe I've seen in one of the articles that I believe Cambridge University did, around 95% of Silicon Valley startups, they are based on large language models. So let's go from the trends to actual use cases. we have a wonderful topic of AI, of robotics, AI and robotics. Azamat, maybe you could share how do you leverage AI in your robotics studies and real-world experience?
Thank you so much. Yeah, actually, AI in robotics is a very great tool actually in robotics. In robotics, we have one of the main serious and a challenging problem in robotics. This is a mathematics, isn't it, behind the control. So right now, we are trying to solve just a math for untraditional robots, isn't it? So that's why it's it brings lots of problems. For example, right now it's all of the robots which we're using and utilizing and just in a factory, in an industry, they have just traditional structure. And to solve the math, we spend a half century, is 50 years. So all of the researchers spend 50 years to simplify the math, isn't it? So that means it's right now that math is is ready for application. It's applicable for real applications, so for to use and to control robots in industry. But what about the robots, which is appeared already only yesterday, isn't it? For example, untraditional. So robots with a snake-like robots, isn't it? Robots with elephant trunk, what we call a bio-inspired robots. This is very difficult. It's the most complicated structures, which has just hundreds of degrees of freedom, very complex shape. For those robots, a math is insane, isn't it? So variables is difficult. For example, some for snake-like robots, it has a 48 variables, isn't it? Instead, against the 6 variables. So that means a 48 variables, how you're gonna handle it, isn't it? So there is one of the great solutions using AI. It simplifies this process, isn't it? Using AI to simplify this process, and no need to just solve so much math and just create so much math formulation, and then so just try to solve a dynamic equation of it. So that means this part is a great tool. So it's gonna simplify, and it makes just improve robot application in this case. And also another thing is this is a great topic is AI and robotics, and another thing is in case of robot control. In robot control, we are collecting a data always from the sensors, isn't it? So whatever sensor you want to use is in your robot, so you always get a raw data. That means you have to cure that data before to use, isn't it? That means you're getting so much data and so much a sensor feedback, but this is not clear, isn't it, anymore? So that's why you have to just take it and do it a secondary conversion. So that what means secondary conversion? So you're getting raw data and making clear to the common users, isn't it? So that means this process it takes a very time consuming and energy consuming as well. To improve this process, so we can use AI and it's a ML, so just to improve, so we can collect, and it creates a special pattern, isn't it? If you're gonna understand a pattern of the sensor feedback and the sensor signal and the signal processing as well, so we can just improve and classify all of the obtaining data, and by using of that, we can just improve it in a high level and increase the precision. So that's the things what's most of the thing what we're doing right now is simplifying robotics for the common people. So and just which makes for students it just makes their lives much more easier actually in terms of a study process.
Will we have Terminators?
That's yeah. In technological, yeah, that's possible, but we have to consider another thing is AI. It doesn't have ambitions, isn't it, rather than human. So that's why I don't think so. That's might have a Terminators. That's possible, but anything AI, by the way, is finally this is the only tool, but this is a great tool. So
Do you have any real life examples of
oh
robotics,
yes.
AI-powered robotics?
Yes, right now, so we are working on robot tensegrity. So this robot is a non-traditional. and it has a hyper-redundant structure. So we are using only a bar and the wire as attendant strings. We, by collecting this like assembling, we design it like a tensegrity structures from word like attention and integrity. So that one is like is very difficult to control. It has a eternal degrees of freedom. So that means like the map what we designed it's like before, it has like a 36 variables. That means like if you want to do one motion, that means you have to spend half hour just to calculate and get like a final position. So that means instead of that, right now, so on our arrays, like I found a way how to just like collecting data and train it, and by using of AI. So we are just like doing in the real time. So this is a great thing, isn't it? That this is a great tool what we are doing right now. So I think this is kind of this is a future. It's like a revolutionary future. So we can design like any type of robot, and the math, no need to spend like so much time on the math, isn't it? So that's like it's next thing is like what's the progress on the robot design will be much faster rather than what we did before.
Okay, this is actually a very interesting topic of optimizing the time that needs to that it takes to teach a robot do one thing and do the other thing. Are there any real world robots that are AI powered, maybe not in Kazakhstan, but maybe you have met, heard, studied, that are already like in the world, in the manufacturing or in some other industries?
Right now, it's like a AI-powered robot in industry is like a very difficult. So industry is a structured area. No need to use like a AI for just like for structured area, because like right now the factories are built not for human, they're built for working on robots, isn't it? So that means like mostly they're not like implementing so much AI in the factories, isn't it? But in mobile robots mostly, so UAVs, like unmanned aerial vehicles, yes, mostly they are just like collecting data, and you might saw that one's like for military purpose. So they are using, unfortunately, this field is in AI and robotics. There is like the same common thing. This is money solves lots of things, isn't it? So that means like there have where is there lots of money? So where that means like that field, it has like a very high chance of like realize this project. So that's why AI right now, AI robotics implemented mostly right now is in for military purpose, unfortunately, and also the systems like robotics. It's a device into two, it's like software and hardware, isn't it? In hardware, it's difficult to implement AI, but in software part, yeah. So AI is the implementation of the AI. So that means like this is recognition, the face recognition, and the human pattern recognition. This kind of part, yeah, AI is still using. Also, I guess our Sergek, so they're still using like some bunch of like just AI. So that's why it's like please keep follows like just traffic rules as well. AI is like always learning about it.
Thank you. Talking about lots of money, right? You said that where there's lots of money, there's lots of opportunities. Lots of money right now are in the healthcare sector. What do you, Aknur, the question to you, how can AI support or augment the work of a doctor or a medical professional without attempting to steal their work or to automate? This one of the concerns is that AI will replace us. So in the healthcare or in any other industry, how can AI be an augmentation or a superpower for a doctor or for a professional?
Thank you for your question. I guess this clicker is not working properly. Maybe for the sake of making it more convenient and flawless, I'll be asking you maybe to turn to the next slide. So healthcare is actually quite huge area, and AI is propagating it for some times now. So not only that we know have been, maybe you have heard Cerebra and other startups are doing healthcare, medical AI startup projects, but AI in healthcare is in many different steps: administrative workflow, virtual nursing assistants, less invariant surgeons, AI-powered robots for some heart disease, maybe some eye surgeries, etc. And also medical training. A lot of radiologists and other personals are being now trained with AI-powered tools because of the lack of high qualified professionals all over the world. And also a huge area for AI in healthcare is obviously automatic diagnosis. There is a lack of well-qualified professionals, not only in developed countries, but not only in developing countries, but developed countries as well. And also another one, last but not the least, is health monitoring and preventative medicine. Many different applications that we have been using right now, like for food logging, maybe tracking your physical activity and these kind of things to improve your some habits. I would like to focus on the last two, which is automatic diagnosis and digital health preventative medicine. So the first one, no, second, can you go back to the second slide? No, maybe the guy will do, Medina. Can you go to the third slide? This is it? Okay, I don't remember my slides very well. So there are some challenges in medical AI. So in medical imaging, it's not only medical imaging is by definition is investigating the structure, the body, any subject without invading it, without cutting or damaging it in any ways. It could be not only actually human body organs or something like this, it could be also even technological devices like microchips, integrated circuits, so a lot of technological companies working using technologies primarily developed for healthcare in their industry, like Intel, Samsung, Google, Apple, who designs chips. In this case, the challenges in medical AI is with the lack of the data. First of all, people come when they have already a serious state of the disease. So there is a lack of the propagation or development of certain disease, and that's why for early diagnosis and early prediction of certain disease types based on any medical imaging, CT scans, MRI, radio scans, etc., it's quite hard. And also there is a huge bias in the data, and annotating and labeling those data is quite time-consuming and challenging, because for this one, you cannot hire any person or any moderators, data annotators who could do that for you. You need highly qualified professionals who are quite in luck, and they need to be highly qualified to be, to trust. And it cannot be only annotated by one person. Usually, in these cases, several persons make some judgment on some image, and then by majority voting, the final diagnosis is done. So that's why this process even complicates integration of AI in this area. And also data acquisition process. I would like to highlight this process, step, because currently the issue with a lot of medical image diagnosis is the quality of the data. So when you have some images, you might have not really good quality image, so it's quite hard to diagnose based on this data. Why it is so? Because you cannot expose human body or a live object to high radiation, right? And there are two ways people try to solve it. This is fast data acquisition time. So you either make it low radiation dose, so you have low quality image, and it's quite hard to make some judgments based on this low quality image, like low resolution image, right? Otherwise, the second option is you don't take the image of the entire object, like 360 degrees, but you take like at certain angles, like projections through, for example, let's say 90 degrees out of 360, and then you combine those projections and you try to make data interpolation and augmentation to fill these missing points, like missing pixels on your image. So these are two areas. The which are being quite addressed with people in this area. And as you can see, I just put the image. You see this weird shaped thing followed by FBP capitalized word. So this is actually what is coming when the images has been collected. These are the projections. So people work in the imaging work there, and they try to use AI to make fast adaptive sampling, so you don't need to scan the whole body of the human organs or part of the body. You will need only to scan certain part. Like you take 1 degree projection, you reconstruct your image, you see which direction should be better next to get the data, and then you speed up the process. You don't need to make more projections, and you make it faster. Faster means much cheaper, because making those things is quite expensive actually. And here also, to solve this problem, people started taking solutions from natural images, like everyday things that we see. Like we could split it to natural images. These are 2D images in RGB, and these are medical images are quite different. They're in 2D, in 3D, and they are actually not free channel images usually. So the most obvious is generative AI to augment the data. People started using different approaches like GAN-based models, maybe you have heard, and different other models that people in natural image computer vision started developing for data augmentation, data enhancement, and image reconstruction. As I said, like this is really crucial step that a lot of research is being done to improve these model performances, but still there is a huge gap, because all of this data are really biased to some small amount of data set that has been taken from certain institution or hospital, etc. And they are biased to this. And if you want to make some real-time analysis and real-time, diagnosis based on these models, it's quite hard, and they are still not trustable, therefore. And there is also one trend that has been investigated, is implicit neural representation. As you can see, there is this is from natural image, so people started using it quite widely in 3D computer vision. Like when you have some discrete data, you try to smooth it out, because our world is not discrete, but when we do it with AI, we discretize it. Same thing, same problem happens in medical imaging, because when data is collected, it's continuously collected, but then they are, when you reconstruct it, at that stage when you see the circular shape is coming out of this ambiguous shape, is this reconstruction process. This process introduces a lot of artifacts, because you try to interpolate continuous world to implicit, or to discrete. And this is also one of the interesting areas that have been developed, investigated right now. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is one of the projects that our researchers have done at ISAI on gliomas detection. This was done in collaboration with USM. They provided our data set, and we, next slide. Sorry for taking, and I'll be just quick couple of minutes. This is basically what I'm currently working on, health monitoring and digital health interventions. Central Asia is considered to be one of the largest, highest death rate for because of the dietary habits. So we try to focus on making people literate in terms of what they eat, what they consume. How we can do this is to introduce some AI tools for digital food logging. So can we go to the next slide? What we have done is Central Asian food recognition. As you can see, these are the foods that we typically commonly eat, and Shazam for food, yeah, in other terms. And the current project that we are working on is food detection, which is like food scene recognition. Is a little bit more complicated. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your attention.
Can I ask a question? So
Yeah, sure.
Regards like just imagine AI is a detected kind of like a tumor on a human, isn't it? So just like, who will provide like the final diagnosis of human or AI?
Yes, that was actually initial question that I supposed to answer, right? Uh, sorry. Currently, yeah, there are a lot of hospitals in collaboration with universities are developing their own models and they are implementing them. But it is now done not by AI, but human AI interaction here comes to the play. So AI helps to make first fast decision, and then it is evaluated by number of, for example, let's say radiologists.
So it's like a second set of eyes.
Yes.
So it's
yeah.
not like a backup, but not
Yeah.
a person, like not like a Terminator that will decide whether you're going to live or die based on
But
your
it
glioma.
also depends maybe on final implementation. There might be some startups that work on dermatology. Like there are quite a lot of data on different skincare diseases, and they are quite accurate, and they are claimed to be more accurate than even really good professionals right now. But I'm not really sure.
Do you think in the next like 25, 50 years, will there be human healthcare professionals that are setting the diagnosis, or will it then just transfer to some AI systems?
I don't think that it will completely replace. It will just speed up the process. It would help such that those professionals would be able to focus and develop and contribute to the research and integration of medical AI faster, but it would not replace, I guess, like in coming 20 years, because we're still lack of the data.
May I reflect on that? So I was actually recently approached by someone who wanted to build a medtech startup. Basically, they had lots of data from radiology department about trauma, and potentially you could annotate it, build your model, and make a nice product. So I could see that the whole pipeline might live, it might happen. But I think the reason why I wanted to talk to you about the synthetic data is because when I realized how much pain it will be to annotate it, and what Aknur said, doctors are so overloaded with work in Kazakhstan. I mean, and potentially you want to build a project that will elevate the work, right? Speed up the process, and then it's going to be all nice and dandy. But finding the right doctors of good qualification who can annotate your data in Kazakhstan is especially hard, not because we don't have them, it's because it's hard to find the time. So I wasn't really sure that I could find the radiologists who will spare time to annotate the data for me and won't make lots of mistakes just because they're so busy in their hospitals. So all the ones that I was trying to find, they're all busy in the trauma centers. And when I looked at how many people can come in one day, that's what was my main hesitant to get into the MedTech project. And then I think Ruslan and I, we met at the KSL Media Forum, and there were some people who were building medical projects, and I asked them, what was the issue with Cerebra? The Cerebra has a nice product, and you may have heard that they are now in accelerator in States. The issue was finding a person who would pay for it. They had a nice project, and no one was paying for it. And then another insight was there was a nice panel on leadership, and many innovations in the medical world in Kazakhstan are stopped because of the bad habits. So coming back to your question, whether we're going to have like completely automated diagnosis here, I don't think so, because our people are so old-fashioned. Our doctors are so old-fashioned. They really don't like the innovations in just digitizing the whole thing about our databases. And just going even this step, this would be just too revolutionary. So I think here the habits of the people will kind of stop us and safekeeping for better or worse. So that's my 5 cents on that.
Okay, Madinas, here is a question actually. Just, yeah, this is very difficult to convince people, isn't it? So people, vast majority of the people and our doctors, they are very conservative, isn't it? So you have to just like, how are you gonna just like go, how we gonna just, we are engineers, we know just like AI is a great tool, isn't it? But how we gonna just like convince the people is like especially doctors to use this tool, isn't it? So that's a great, and you can trust that one.
I mean, I think once Cerebra figures out this thing, we'll get the answer, because that's what really obscuring. It's a great startup. They have nice experts in their team, they're going in the right direction, but that's what I realized was their main issue is who is going to buy the product. And that's what told me, because I'm a researcher, but I potentially want to move on to the startup world and join you guys. But people told me that yes, you should solve a problem that could get to many people, but they need to also willing to pay for it, not just solve your problem, but even to pay for it.
Yeah, the thing what I'm
Yeah.
just like afraid of it. So we have a radio phobes, isn't it? So the people's like they have a very just like a phobia of a radio, just waves, isn't it? So no, don't put like a there because have a headache and a blah blah. And I'm just like a very worrying about it. Like just in the future we might have like an AI phobia as well. So I'm just wondering about my colleagues, like what do you think about it? Like how is it possible just like this kind of things that might be appear in our country?
Well, I think it opens the chapter of the AI ethics. Yeah, since this whole AI phobia comes from the ethical moments and the letters written to stop continuing this public use of certain AI tools. Everything has these ethical moments, and let me provide you with an example of my previous experience. A couple of months ago, I've been hosting a conference which wasn't dedicated to AI, by the way, but one of the parts of it was dedicated to AI. So the conference was dedicated to Web3 and blockchain, but during that conference there was an exhibition of different types of AI-generated art. And why did we decide to include that in the topic of blockchain, for example? Yeah, so the main reason is we tried to figure out, can we call it art? I mean, things which are generated by artificial intelligence. And after that, we had another question. So, does AI really exist, or are we in the process of creating the right AI? And the answer was, not the answer, but what we figured out during that exhibition is, so the exhibition was a metaverse where we had different types of AI artists. They call themselves that way nowadays. And of course, there are some kind of artists who craft their art by hand. Some of them use different digital tools, and some of them use AI tools. And that's the answer. I mean, AI, it's not something separate, it's a tool. It's a tool like nowadays for artists, it's a tool like Photoshop, it's a tool like Illustrator, Figma, and many other different things. And of course, I was really impressed by the results, by the art of the AI artists, by their AI art. And they were trying to sell their art as NFTs in the metaverse. That was kind of productive thing. And so the ethical moment about that is the AI is, it cannot be called art, since the human is who validates a certain thing to call it art or not to call it art. Because in the real world, I mean, when we, for example, paint something, a certain image, we cannot call every image art. And this way, we cannot call every AI image art. So even if there is lots of different beautiful content on the internet, and it's easily right-clickable and savable on your PC. But when we talk about, for example, Mona Lisa, it has some historical background and historical meaning for people. That's why it costs a lot of money, and it's in a museum. And with AI, it's the same way. So the ethical moment is that so we need to treat it like a tool, not like a separate, independent, intelligent thing, as far as I understand nowadays.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I know
Thank
that
you.
wasn't so
That's
really
nice,
research-based, like your experience, since I'm working in the industry, not,
But
not
still,
in the research environment.
yeah, but still, AI art is a part of a more popular to people like this Midjourney, DALL-E 3, Stable Diffusion, all of the things. Do you consider that, let's touch upon the art itself. and the things that the generative AI produces, do you think that, say, a AI generated script should script for a movie, like for Netflix, something like that, and AI generated art could be a sort of a thing that people would pay for?
Yes, thank you for the question. I think I have some opinion on that. So now we live in a kind of evolution of AI, which will turn to revolution, since now we treat every content like, so we will live in a world where every piece of content will be dedicated, will be seen like, as fake. I mean, with the development of AI, everything will be fake. Every kind of content, it will be fake by default. And we will need to figure out why it's not fake. Now we think that, is it original or not? I mean, we don't think that unless people say so. And in the future, we will be thinking more about proving if certain content on the internet is fake.
You have something to add?
I think we should read more carefully what the Association of Writers and Actors planning to agree on with the companies in the Hollywood. Because you may have heard that basically one major strike just finished of the writers, and AI was a very big thing. And the actors are still striking, specifically because of the synthesized or fake scripts and images and so on and so forth. So I think it's a very big thing, because I know the companies are trying to optimize, as you said, and I know that certain law companies, agencies, they're really kind of optimizing the number of paralegals they have, because the research could be optimized with the ChatGPT and some other services tuned specifically for their needs. When we started talking about Midjourney, I think because I'm using it also as a tool to synthesize data and observing how it behaves. Again, the freaking bias in the models are so still prevalent, and I think a big part of research is to just analyzing how fair and ethical those tools are. For example, I had a situation when a student, he had to recreate lots of images where the model was making mistakes on. And there was one model, and in Midjourney, you can send an image, it will give you a prompt, and then you can give it back the prompt to potentially generate images very similar to the input original, right? So apparently that image had lots of red pixels. It was quite red. And there was a man, a white man. And the student didn't look at the text prompt it generated. And when he automatically put it back, basically we had tons of images of maniacs, because the model thought that those red pixels is blood. And he was about to put it back to the model and train it, and I had to stop, and I was like, dude, look at this. This is not what we're supposed to use to train our models. But those kind of rare or weird cases you can come up, that can come up, and you have to be aware of it. So please be careful with those generative models. People are still, there's a whole line of research just understanding, because it's so hard to keep up with the research of the big tech. So certain big groups, even in Harvard, MIT, they're just focused on analyzing the behavior of these models. That could enlighten you as well if you want to use it as a tool, because as it was said before, now it's basically a commodity, but you should be aware in the bias of the commodity.
Yeah, coming to the generative AI and the usage of generative AI in enterprises or small companies like startups. Alixan or Miras, do you guys use generative AI in enterprise solutions or in your startup activities? Let's start with Alixan maybe, and then Miras will continue.
I would say that the company I work for is not a product company, so we are not. We don't have our own products, but we deliver products for other vendors, I would say. And I'm not sure if I am allowed to provide you with some examples. Yeah, but still, I would say that lots of the work delivered by the company I work for is the majority of the work is dedicated to one is the RPA, the process automation with AI, and another thing is for different types of production companies who, for example, mine mine coal or oil and gas industry, and those industries are one of the biggest consumers of AI tools in terms of B2B enterprise sector.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on RPAs? This is robotic process automation.
Exactly.
Is that correct?
Yeah,
Does it use computer vision, generative AI, or something inside there? Could you elaborate what a robotic process automation is and how AI is working inside of it?
So I'm not sure if I'm able to dig into the technical details in terms of the technical side, but in terms of the simple RPA, it was always a kind of effective thing to optimize certain businesses. And when we say about AI, it multiplies the effect maybe x2 or x3 times. And now we see this lots of news about IT companies who cut their expenses after the pandemics and cut their the number of their employees, and that's also with the help of RPA tools, since companies nowadays are trying to optimize different sectors of their economy.
Could you put a equal sign, RPA equals AI? Is this the way to say this?
Not really, not
Okay.
really. I mean, AI is
RPA. So for our audience, and maybe you can just add on that. In my understanding, RPA is everything that I can do with my hands, like go there, take this one, put it this way, or click this window, put like this file over here, print it out, and something like that. All of this can be automated, and this is where RPAs comes in.
Yeah, it's robotic process automation, and it's trying to optimize everything you do more than 2 times. I mean, every repeated action. And when it comes to big companies like which have, for example, 50,000 people, employees, like for example, some kind of retail companies like Pepsi, Coca-Cola, and so on, if they even reduce the amount of double clicks on a certain folder, they can cut their expenses on something, since on the number of, for example, 50,000 employees, it's kind of representative number. And AI is something that helps to boost this this method, I would say, this tool. It's not, so it's not an equal sign, but it's something that makes it more advanced, brings it to a more advanced level.
Saying that
I think this is make it an equal sign is like in terms of like a hardware, it will be very difficult, I guess. So right now AI is like growing so fast, but hardware is still in like an 80s. So we are still using conventional motors. So that the motors, what we are using right now in our laboratories, like I just say, it was been developed in 1980s, isn't it? In 1990. So it's not like it's a hardware right now. So much money is like investing in AI, not in hardware, actually. So that's why it's like this is a breaking, not balanced. This field is not balanced. And if you want to say like it's just gonna be would be equal, I have a so big up as that. If it's gonna be kind of like a diagnosis in terms of like a medical stuff, probably yeah, probably somehow pretty equal. But in terms of like imitate like a whole of the human work in the real life, yeah, this is difficult to say. This, I think we need just like a couple of decades might be when it's like a hardware will reach that level. Humanoids might be, yeah, that's right. It's like a humanoids that level. Hardware is like is still very behind, very behind.
Okay, yeah, let's go a little bit back. You mentioned hardware in robotics. But what about hardware in AI, the actual graphics cards, the infrastructure that drives the AI? And here, what I would like to ask is the opinion of a startup company. How do you leverage AI first without creating a foundation model and with small hardware capabilities that we have here in Kazakhstan? What is your take on that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Unfortunately, I'll have to answer and leave because I have very important call with some of our partners, so I'll be quite short. You don't need any research, you don't need any servers, you don't need anything. If you're a company, a small startup, you literally can just use APIs and do a front end on that thing, a little bit back end, and we are grossing $20,000 in monthly revenue now, and we are on track to make $1 million next year. So you absolutely don't need to do deep research, and you don't need to own the servers. You can be the one who's distributing it to the end user, and that creates a lot of immense value. So that would be my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we still have lots of questions about using APIs, hardwares, and etc. Maybe we could discuss this with other speakers. Do you have something to say about the hardware? The main issue of launching a sophisticated AI, saying like even the Kazakh ChatGPT model, is the hardware that runs it. Not only runs it, not the inference side, but the hardware that trains it. So in terms of that, do you guys, any of you guys, see or think that hardware right now in Kazakhstan for AI development in Kazakhstan is a major issue, or is it mostly the brains of the people?
And I'm gonna be the ambassador of our institute about that. So at SI, we were fortunate enough that the university invested and provided us with the infrastructure. So if you go to our website, you'll see that we have DGXs of the first, of the second generation. We also have A100. We are, I think, the team is figuring out how to get the H100. That's the state of the art. There's lots of like back orders, so it's hard to catch them. That's really, if I think the first gold or the first oil is data. The second one is, I think, the GPUs. So hard to get them, and now basically NVIDIA has the monopoly almost on them. AMD is developing. There are also some other startups who are trying to compete with NVIDIA, but the scale is different. So we are fortunate that the university provided us with the resources. We try to share it with other research institutes. So we, our technical project coordinator talks to different institutes in Central Asia and here, so we can, because our main goal is to facilitate research in the Central Asia. The startups do reach out to us because they see that we have the hardware, they see if they can collaborate with us. Usually it's very hard for us to accommodate. We're in the process of optimizing it, so we could share even more and take advantage of all of it. But I think we also found that just renting out for those large language models and some other models that require so much data and they train so many hours and days, it's just really expensive to rent it out. So I think there was a news that maybe Amazon will come out and help us out, because we've been talking to the government and we were always saying, please invest in the infrastructure in Kazakhstan. And even though we cannot provide access to the startups, they are aware of the pain. As our colleague said, that if you go in the direction that you take a model that has been created for you and is being maintained for you, then you can build a project and you don't care about just the whole maintenance. You could go to Hugging Face and you can find a model that works greatly for you. And you don't have to train it. Maybe inference is enough, but you'll need a server to continuously run it. But maybe you don't need a big GPU for EBU because the inference doesn't usually take that much space. But still, you'll need some place for it. And for certain applications, certain startups, they come to us because they are looking for hardware local. So I'm cautiously optimistic about the news about Amazon, because I know that a year ago they talked about internet from Elon Musk, and we know that the internet in Astana it really sucks, but it's even worse for agricultural companies outside cities. And we have colleagues that are in the Assetergen Observatory, and for them it's even harder. So they would really hope that we can get that internet. So if we get more kind of like here with the Amazon W services, I don't know. It's really curious for me. I'm curious why they chose AWS and not Azure or not Google. Maybe I suppose they won the tender and it worked out. But hopefully, the new data centers that they will provide, it will be easier for you to build projects, because this approach is nice. But for many of you, you want to maybe do something original or creative, and it might be actually world class. But in that case, you need the hardware, and right now it's a very limited resource, like water.
So in order to run a very good software, AI-driven software, according to the law, we are obliged to have the servers standing on the territory of Kazakhstan. On premises, yes, exactly. So is it appropriate to ask whether, Alihan, you guys, if you have AI-driven software, if you help other vendors develop these software products, do they have them on premises, or are you not allowed to talk about that?
I think it's like let me just finish like with some kind of ideas. So what's our problem? Is it hardware or just some other stuff? I think the human resource is like a most problematic issue, isn't it? So for example, hardware is like easy to solve it. Yeah, we can buy it, but like a human resource is like just like a brains. What we have right now is like it's very hard to like keep holding here, isn't it? So we have a drainage, is like a draining our brains. Like this is a lot. It's like we have just lots of like rotation in there. Even in regional universities, like you won't find like a high qualified expert, isn't it? So I think, yeah, just in our case, like I think we have to concentrate and focus on like a preparation of the just a high qualified expert in this field. And yeah, and then like the next thing is like what we think is like, this is the hardest one. It's like easiest is like a hardware. We can find it, isn't it? So we can find like a hardware. Yeah, this is terms of the money. It's like if we'll have enough source, yeah, we will find it, isn't it? So that means like we have to just like attract more investments on this phase.
So in your opinion, the major issue in large-scale AI development is not the hardware, it's actually the people who do develop the systems.
Yes. So that's, yeah, that's for sure. It's like just if you're gonna buy like just hardware for $10 million and if you spend like $0 to the like a human resource fact, so you know, if you're gonna do this like in a controversial way, so the results would be like absolutely different, isn't it? So that means like just your priority is like a human or hardware, isn't it?
Yes, my answer would be short. So that in terms of the B2B enterprise companies, following all that compliance things is kind of very important and very strict. No, I mean in terms of where the hardware is, where the data comes from, about all that licenses, about all that compliance issues.
Yeah, this is how you answer a question without answering the question. Shazam for food. Where do you run it? How do you run it?
Where do I run my models?
Yeah.
We run it on our DGX servers. But regarding the question about holding our, if it's governmental data on premise or cloud-based, I would, if that was a question, right? Not really? Okay, I personally think that it should be cloud-based. When it comes to governmental things, we should follow, I think, like South Korea have developed quite a huge data lake, data warehouses for storing all of their data at one place, all this infrastructure on premise. So I think cloud-based solution is not really best option in the long term, because you don't have it running 100% of the time throughout the year. There is always something in the technologies. And this is my personal opinion on this decision of the government.
For our audience, Shazam for Food is quite a good product, say. What does it take to have this product? I mean, can an average student create an analog of Shazam for Food without accessing the Nazarbayev University's servers, with using APIs, other cloud-based systems?
Yes, actually, there are quite a lot of tools. If those guys are somehow know AI, something, you know, YOLO models, right? Like Ultralytics, they have developed a product in collaboration called RoboFlow, and there are some other startup companies that have developed APIs so that you can easily access them. It's not really cheap actually, but you can use the data available outside. You can train your models on cloud-based. You can get them converted. You can get it even to test it inference, like put it in the production using all of those APIs. So it's really, how to say, easy. And I think this is also one niche for startups to make AI really, how to say, how to say, affordable for every random people, not from in AI, like people without prior knowledge, like could do AI things by using those like prepared products.
Actually, this is Shazam for Food. This is a great tool, isn't it? So, for me especially, so I have a zero knowledge about like dishes, isn't it? When I order in a restaurant, so right now, so I can check it out, isn't it? So do they like giving a shit for me? So that's like just for testing, isn't it? So in that terms, yeah, this is a great tool actually. I think yeah, this is in near future is like it might be success. Isn't it?
So basically, we will release the data, some cert models, and then people can move on. And if we don't get too fast, you guys could. The data set will be released, so you can they can follow our Instagram. So once the data is released, and we'll release certain models, you basically can build all the projects related to the Kazakh language, to the multimodal stuff. If you go to our website and if you access our GitHub, feel free to build something greater. We are a research institute. We just release the data. We make some prototypes, but it's up to you to make it to the end project. And if it works, it's great. And basically, based on our documentation, you'll understand what computational resources you might need to rent out if we cannot provide you. So, yep. But I think coming back to the AWS, and you talked about that the data needs to be stored locally. Maybe they understand that there's not enough of human resources and expertise to build it, because like our computer engineers, they do many things for the first time. They need to know how to connect the InfinityBand, how to work with the ports, and the guys are learning something new every day, and we love them. We love them for that. But it's hard. Not many people do it. So I could understand why they want to kind of outsource it. But I just hope that they don't outsource it so much that they don't invest in the local. Because we are the university. We have engineers, computer scientists, robotics people, and not only at NU and in other universities. So I just hope that this will be also major, like a new workplace, and they can get this knowledge and learn about it, how to build and run and maintain those data centers. That's actually kind of our hope, that not only we startups and research centers can get placed to run our models, but other our friends can get a new job and learn something good stuff, and it could move it. So
Okay, I think we will wrap up with one last question from me to the speakers, and then we'll open a Q&A session with the audience. In enterprise solutions, what are the challenges that you need to think about when implementing AI solutions? Up to governance.
Yes, so one of the challenges, I would say, non-technical challenges, I would say, since I'm not a developer myself, is this bubble effect. I mean, we've seen lots of bubble effects since the digital era has come. For example, when the dot-coms exploded, when the blockchain appeared maybe 5 years ago or 7 years ago, when the AI came. If a certain company, if a certain big brand sees that their companies like them are also doing something in the AI, they just come to IT companies say that we don't want to be left behind. Please, we have no understanding about AI, but please provide us with some solutions. So there are lots of companies like this who come without any understanding why do they need it, but still they come and they grow the stocks on the market of different IT companies, and that turns into a bubble. So that's one of the challenges for enterprise companies.
So saying that the trend in AI right now leads to a bubble in the shares of the cost of the shares of the IT giants.
Yes, not fully, but still. So we all know that AI is here, and it's not going to. We will not come back to the previous times, but still, there are some speculations in the IT sphere on the AI topic. For example, even fashion brands try to do something in the AI. I mean, different types of brands, they have no understanding of AI, but still they need it for some reason, but they don't understand why. They have no why.
Yeah, this is a very good remark. So do you foresee that in the enterprise solutions sector, there will be a drop in AI interests or AI implementation? Because in research, there will not be a drop.
I think yes, but I'm not. So that will not kind of drop, but it will stop growing at some point. I think that maybe in the perspective of 5 years or 10 years, most brands will have this clear understanding about the reasons. And after that, it will not grow at the same velocity as it's now. Yeah, yeah, partially overhyped, of course.
it kind of reminds me that at the pandemic, lots of tech companies, they hired lots of people, so it was kind of a bubble. It was kind of a bubble, and then they started laying off lots of people when they kind of adjusted to their needs. So I kind of read from what you said is that right now the whole topic is a bit overhyped. Certain enterprises are using even though they don't have to, and soon enough people kind of will cool off, and maybe excitement and in the stock prices will kind of also will understand there is like just overexcitement with Tesla and Nvidia and some other companies.
And nowadays, for example, lots of sales managers, account managers, they don't have to even sell the AI, since there is already a line of companies and clients and vendors who are coming for solutions, and it's kind of overhyped is the right word, I would say.
So an advice to everyone: do not buy the shares of large tech companies. Thank you. This is actually very interesting. If we try to go back to the first questions that I asked, is AI a hypo or hype? So in the research area, it is a big thing. in enterprise, it's a big thing, but that is overhyped to wrap up the discussions that we have over here right now. So I'd like to start a round of Q&A with the audience. If you have any questions to our speakers, please raise your hand and we will hand you the microphone and you will have the opportunity to ask the questions from our speakers.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to ask the questions. Thanks for the talk. It was very informative. My question is quite a bit off topic, but still connected to AI. Deepfakes are a big thing now, and what do you think? They are starting to training in Kazakhstani informational sphere in our informational bubble. And recently, I have seen a deepfake with Marqulan Sisimbai, if I'm not mistaken, and those are used in order to fraud people. What do you think, what we can do as developers to prevent them from spreading too much?
Yes, I have kind of vision about that. So as I mentioned during my answer to previous questions, that in the future everything will be fake by default. I mean, with growing this kind of AI tools, we will have everything fake. So every movie, every tweet, every post on the Instagram, everything will be fake by default, and we will try to, the needs will, so we will have this need to understand, is it fake or not, and what's the right method to do that. I think that it's very hard to accept some kind of unified rules or maybe laws for the whole globe to come and agree. People are not good at negotiations and agreeing on something, especially when it comes to different countries. For example, some countries, they are banning using of AI. Some companies are not banning. And one of the things is to prove everything with a certificate. What kind of certificate? NFT certificate. For example, if we will tokenize AI results of AI, different pieces of AI results will be tokenized as digital assets. For example, it will be much easier to understand: is it fake or not, or if it's fake, whose fake is it? For example.
But nonetheless, I guess you can hear me.
Yes.
Nonetheless, how can we, for example, protect the usual Instagram user who is 40 years old or even more than that, who does not really care about the NFT certificates of the advertisement maker, right? And he just sees an advertisement where his idol, or I don't know, a celebrity he follows, just speaks about the financial pyramids and etc.
So yes, I think that nowadays every big tech company who got rich with using different, collecting different types of data, like Instagram or maybe Meta, Mank companies, for example. So they will also need to adopt this tokenization thing and maybe have this proof mechanism for even for the feed you on your Instagram and everything. So big tech companies, they will also need this adoption of different type of certification methods. Like it's not only blockchain and NFTs, but NFTs as a good mechanism, which is kind of cheap, easy to adopt, I would say. So that's why I'm very positive about this synergy between these two overhyped things. And yes, and that's also maybe a big philosophic question, since the way we use data nowadays is kind of so there are lots of things some people don't like about using data, about data collection, about how data is predicting, for example, pregnancy. And for example, some kind of advertisements on marketplaces about buying pregnancy tests before a woman gets pregnant, for example. such kind of predictive mechanisms, they are scary sometimes, and that's why this is a big philosophy of our data governance and data ownership in terms of Web 2, Web 3, and yeah, I think that's it.
Aknur, you have something to add?
I just wanted to add maybe the question that you are asking also leads to ethical AI, and this area is developing quite fast, and people, lawmakers, and people who should regulate it are quite falling behind, and it's quite hard to keep up with the technology that has been developing. And I think maybe in the long term, what would make sense to solve these kind of things is to make some kind of regulation, some kind of organization which within the government would be responsible to track. This is kind of, like kind of cybersecurity, but in terms of finding things in AI which do harm for society. Maybe this kind of initiatives would be developed in 10 or 20 years or so.
I think we should kind of step back in terms of, because the fraud is a very important question, because deepfakes, it's basically kind of this whole fraud issue, right? And we need to understand that people are very creative. And you can get tricked to, especially with those financial pyramids, our people sometimes don't need deepfakes. They need a Russian bot or some Vietnamese bot to give them some wrongful information coming from a perfect human and get in trouble. And as an educator and with some experience working with our new students are so creative in cheating or figuring out, finding those edge cases, and I can see someone is laughing because if we look at the history of the humankind, we see that there has been lots of strategies to con people. And I agree, with AI, it is especially kind of dangerous and scary. But I think this is kind of the challenge for us as humans to evaluate, because we're afraid of those terminators and some like automated diagnosticians and so on and so forth, right? I think it's more a challenge for us to understand what is a Homo sapiens when we have those very smart systems, how we should perceive information. And the situation, for example, with Brexit is also another example of people being fed target information, the elections in the United States. AI is basically a reflection of us, of how we tend to use those tools. I agree we need regulations. I agree that the companies need to adapt and figure out how to kind of limit it. But the creativity of a person when they want to con, when they want to cheat is endless. And it's part of our amazing creative culture. So I just hope that this will be another kind of evolutionary process for us. Who is a Homo sapiens in this world? There is this book, Dune. I think many of us saw the movie. So there is this test of Gom Jabbar. And when I was reading it when I was 13, I didn't get it. When I watched it again, after developing AI, I understand it differently. It's basically a test whether you're human or an animal. And now understanding whether you have a fake information, because it's one thing, fake information. Another thing is misleading, intentionally misleading information written by a person. Figuring out that is also important in regulating it. And I hope that we can help our older population and our brothers, those who are fortunate to get good education and culture knowledge, to understand how to kind of curate the information and regulate ourselves. Because the government is outdated. And I was actually told that if you want, as a career, connecting policy and AI is also very hard across the world. So you could be the one who would actually help companies and governments to regulate that process and be a leader in that field, because again, it's an opportunity for growth. But my answer might not be kind of the answer you expected. It's quite philosophical, but knowing our students, like people are very creative, and I don't know, like always something would come up.
If I may add a little bit, the regulation will not be a sort of solution, because right now in the western part of the world, there are the Europeans are right now the first ones that are going with the AI regulation. They will launch an AI Act in early 2024 that has a very good point. One point is all AI generated output shall be labeled as AI generated. But as Medina said, we have lots of people who are very creative that could make something that that could, for example, if you even right now, if you use Midjourney or Pika Labs or Stable Diffusion or any of that, you will see a tiny bit of a watermark on the bottom left or bottom right saying that this is the logo, or some several pixels that indicate that this is AI generated. You can just put a mask in a video editing tool, and you will not have this watermark. So it comes to us, as Medina said, and it comes to media literacy, a literacy of us to see and to ask, be critical, ask whether this is fake, whether this is AI generated, and etc. Technologically, there will be systems there are systems that already that can say, is this text generated by ChatGPT? But there are other systems that can regenerate this ChatGPT generated text, that this saying anti-plagiat thing that cannot detect this AI generated. So in the end, it comes to you and I. It comes to us. Yeah, we have questions.
Uh, this is not like a serious answer actually. When I was away this summer, I had a teacher at school. I had to know her, and she teaches literature or something like this. And because of the ChatGPT, a lot of students started using it to make essays, and then she started reading them, and she figured out it was AI-generated essays. And she told her, if you submit me AI-generated essay, I will give you AI-generated evaluation.
So sorry, it's like there is another way. So there are lots of ways like how to check it out. AI content detectors, like there is a website, and you can ask ChatGPT directly. So did you generate this one? It's like say like sometimes it might say like a yes or not. So, and also if the text had been paraphrased, so ChatGPT, I think anyway, or they're able to like just a partially, you might say like a partially, I generated just this text. So I think, yeah, this is possible. I think one of our targets, a problem. I think the people and the kids have to learn how to use like a ChatGPT, but in right way, isn't it? So that's like, if you have like just have a tasks like with ChatGPT, I think we have to generate kind of like a task for students, for kids. So ChatGPT should be, in that case, like ChatGPT should be the rule, not solution, isn't it? So it's kind of like just a tool. They have to use it at once, like, and create something like a nice one is a nice thing. And the creativity, I think in that case, like we might solve this one is like where ChatGPT would be useless stuff, isn't it?
May I kind of clarify, you're a teacher in kind of writing or computer science programming? Both. So as a person who works with students, we actually tell them use Copilot or ChatGPT. FYI, you can get Copilot for free if you with our NU account. So because we understand that in terms of developing, it speeds up the process. Because for us, it's very important that the student can build the whole project. So if he or she generates some certain class with Google Copilot, but understands how to use it, I think that's the main question, is that you can he or she can give the right prompt. And what I realized is that even to Copilot, you really have to specify what you really need. So it will give you, and I'm personally struggling right now, so I'm figuring out what kind of class functionality I actually need, and Copilot is not giving me what I need, so it means that I need to kind of redefine what I'm actually prompting it. So we teaching our students at the research lab to use it correctly. We need to write papers fast, we need to build code fast, we are building whole kind of pipeline. So we take it as an advantage. But in terms of the educator part of myself, I understand your concern. I think maybe then the way we test the kids is about whether they understand this piece of code. Because in the reality, they go to big companies and they'll have to find a job and they will expect them to use it. So even though we want them to learn how to completely spell it out and build module by module, the reality is a bit different, that they need to learn it. It's up to them whether they understand the importance of it. It's like, when I was studying computer science, they were teaching us, I think it was MIPS or NIPS, this low-level language that works with basically transistors. And we were like, why the hell do we need it? We're working with high-level languages, at least C. And they said, you need to appreciate it. You have to go through this pain so you appreciate the amount of effort it was put to develop the languages you have and what's happening underneath. So I suppose now we're going to get into this level with the high-level languages, that people will be, we will understand that they're going to use all of those tools, but hopefully they'll get something out of it. So yeah, it's a bit sad to be educator. It's very hard to adapt. I think it's a big topic at NU. I know the writing center is freaking out about it, but I think I think it's a discussion for a separate panel of educators, and I would be actually curious to hear your thoughts. And I see there's my friend who is also an instructor in the CS department, and I'm sure she has some other interesting point of view. So we'll see where it gets, but we tell them to use it.
We have one question from the back, and then one last question from the back as well. Thank you.
Can I give
Actually,
can I
you
give a
have.
response, Ruslan? Can I
Yep.
give a short response to that,
Yeah,
if
sure.
possible? I think like you came up, you have this idea of this basically kind of understanding how the medical treatment affects your body. I think it's a very nice example of digital twins. If someone has some medical experience or in the medical school and wants to get into diagnosis, um, this, if you go into the website of Omniverse of NVIDIA, it's very well used in medical field, specifically because you can safely simulate the flow, right? Because we know a lot about human body, how it operates. So you could potentially recreate a simulation of it. And then you can collect information from the doctors and put it as a parameters to kind of build this dynamic model. And it could be for a certain specific demographic or a type of a patient, but it could be potentially done. Maybe not necessarily specifically with AI, but you also predict, because all of these processes, they're kind of natural. Just basically, AI is not always the tool you want to use. There are different statistical analysis or different simulations that are based on just the laws of physics and biology that could help you build that as well. So just one idea how you could do it.
Can I just add two sentences to your question? Like, if you take this one, this thing, but you don't want to hurt your liver or other organisms, like there have been quite a lot of work done on this with the ChatGPT started and large language models. People in medicine started taking it for themselves, like how to use LLMs for nutritional recommendation or dietary or some clinical recommendations for patients. There have been some articles published in JAMA Open Network. Maybe you know this is really good destination like Lancet. They did some work on urology, some dietary interventions, like trying to test whether these kind of tools are good to, because ordinary people will not understand too complicated technology, right? Like it should be really like explaining and saying it in very easy way, like not comprehensive way. And these tools are actually being developed right now. So maybe hopefully, yes. And here at the site, we actually, in collaboration with Nusom, have done submitted some work on assessing LLMs for nutritional recommendations, but we don't consider hard cases when people have some chronic diseases and some really specific medications taking in, but more general, like specific, like generalistic cases, case scenarios. I think this is what you have mentioned, right? Like these are coming soon. Thank you.
And we do not have time for many questions. I told that we have room for one more question, and I'm thinking of asking the organizers whether we have room for 3 more questions, because I think people are very interested. Okay, let's start with the question number 1 from the back.
Last topic, I want to say that using models like Lambda and OpenAI is not effective in medicine because it has hallucination and make fake and generate fake information. And for making diagnoses, it will be very bad.
Yes, therefore, for these purposes, special model needs to be retrained for specific data set.
Okay, and my question is, yesterday I read article about energy consumption.
Okay, let me ask this question. So, in terms of technology, nuclear energy is a one of the clean energies. So because like it just emissions is almost a near to zero, isn't it? So the problem of the Kazakhstan is a nuclear is like it should be water very near, isn't it? So that means like yeah, we don't have so much water resource like as a Europe, as a Japan, or as a United States. So that's the main problem. So that's why they cannot like they are still considering. So we had a nuclear station actually, energy station is like in Aktau actually, but that one is like a slightly different one. Is like it was in Caspian, near the Caspian, isn't it? Caspian Sea. But here and in terms of the Caspian Sea is like a drowning as well. So that's a serious problem. Building of that. If it's gonna be kind of like renewable energy in terms of like eco energies, like a solar, yeah, wind turbines, or just like solar panels, yeah, this is absolutely possible. And the driving was like all of the energy by using I think this is kind of like this is a good solution in terms of like a long-term technical parts, like a technical solution. So because all of the like a machinery part in that factory, it could be also operated by AI as well. So I don't think so. It's like just nuclear power could be good solution in this case.
And sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Just
Okay. Yeah. So my answer not in terms of the AI, but in terms of keeping data centralized. It has many disadvantages, not only with using different types, not only since it's a very, it has a very big energy consumption, but it's also, so you can explode the centralized data server, for example. You can ban a certain country, for example, like Russian Roskomnadzor banned Instagram, for example. Just turn the toggle off and the whole country is disconnected from a certain server. And there are lots of other disadvantages, and here decentralization comes to mind. So maybe another way to leverage this issue is by trying to adopt decentralized methods.
I think this answers your question, right?
One more
we
question,
have
please.
2 last questions, and after that, we have questions from the entrepreneur.
Thank you very much. Good evening for everyone. So first question.
So yes and no, since not every image your child draws is art, but some images are art. The same way, not every prompt brings some art results. Some prompts are not enough validated to be called art, but some of them are valid to be seen like art. Shortly. Yeah.
I have a very short answer. You're sitting at the right spot because the person is next to you is our coordinator. So he is the best person to answer that question. So bingo on that. No, the reason why we have the coordinator because he just knows very well how our institute operates. He is the one who will know who is the best person to kind of connect to you, because we like here we don't have anyone who's representing the language team. but those are really talented people. You might need those. So I might not be the person you're looking for, Aknur maybe, or the one. So Yerbol, he really knows inside out all the things that we can give you and we cannot, because I'm just a researcher. I might not fully realize certain things. And he organizes well those meetings. We at least have a Zoom. We hear you out and we think what can we discuss it with the whole team, with our director, and see how we can help you. So we have our Yerbol specifically because we need help with coordination, communication, and he really is the person, the best one to start the collaboration with.
You mean collaboration of like an institute and with? Sometimes, yeah.
I think we had some cases, but not for private businesses, but for the government. There have been some customs and some from healthcare or some other departments of the government coming with the issue, but they prepare the data, they give the data. We don't label and do this all manual, really hardworking stuff, but do consult in terms of building the models and providing them solutions. But I think with more details, again, Yerbol will be much more helpful than us. Thank you.
This is how you answer the question without answering the question. Take two. And one very last question.
It's my question. Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank you all very much for the session. It was very informative, and I'd like to question something you mentioned earlier. You said that it would be hard to attract customers for medical startups involving AI. But I'd like to ask if you see potential in a startup that involves implementing AI in EEG data interpretation for making medical diagnosis of specific brain abnormalities.
In terms of potential, definitely all the ideas about speeding up the process of the diagnosis are the great ones. It's just once you start thinking out the next steps, like who is going to annotate your data? When you go through this whole pipeline of like what I showed, what the colleagues talked about, that the whole process you have to go through with that, what we consult when startups or government entities come, that's when you realize how much is at stake. So because the ideas there are lots of great ideas. The implementation is the key. So you definitely could have a great idea with EKG, with other sensors, and you might, even if there is already existing one, you might have a unique take on it, or it's just focused, for example, on our Central Asia region. It's just, in the end, that's what kind of, when I evaluated what it would take me to build it, given what I had with the radiology data, and after talking to certain people who had already built some IT projects, it was just my personal decision that I'm not ready for that. But you might have a different kind of point of view and set in the environment, and it might work.
By annotations, do you mean for the training of the model, or for what?
Yeah, so for example, the way I think you also taught is that much of the data is quite raw, and just preparing it to train takes a lot of time, and figuring out what format should be. And that is kind of labor intensive if you're not synthesizing or simulating that data, and finding the people who will clean the data for you so you can later train. For example, I'm an ML person. I couldn't find myself a very strong medical partner who would be so invested in cleaning the data and making sure that the annotators are doing the right thing. For some projects that we're doing at SI, we're able to do it because we have enough expertise to understand. Like Aknur is doing this Food Shazam project because you have a partner at medical school, right? Who's able to guide you and help out. So they have this symbiosis. In your case, you should think about it. If you have the sufficient medical expertise, then maybe you need this ML or data science partner who can help you out with the other part. But this is a very key point, whether you have the medical part covered as well as the ML part.
Okay, thank you very much.
But we are not discouraging you. Yes, this is a very great idea, and yeah.
Thank you.
And be filthy rich, and we will all remember the day when you ask this question.
My team and I passed to the second stage of the ABC incubation, so let's hope it goes well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Please, a round of applause to our audience, to our distinguished speakers. And thank you for this very, very interesting discussion. I think one of our participants did a better job than me in wrapping up all that we were speaking about today, so I will not do it again anymore. So thank you all so much. If you have any other questions to our speakers, you can just approach them directly or through a curator. Thank you so much, and see you next time.
Thank you.